Hi, this is Michael William Denny of ThunderShamanism.com. So, today we're going to continue in the series talking about the book, The Thunder Wizard Path. And if you haven't, go ahead and watch the introduction to it. And, I'm not going to give you word for word what's in the book. What I really want to do is sort of touch on it and then give you some of my updated views about it. Because, that book is almost 10 years old, and my experiences and my views have changed and evolved, and so I'm going to kind of give you more of a where I'm at with some of these things. So we talked about why I called it the Thunder Wizard Path. I shared with you, I sort of jumped ahead in the book and shared with you how, I got started writing this. But so let's go to chapter 1, which is Teutonic Spirituality in Modern Times. Now, this was important to me because, most people have no idea how much our shamanic prehistoric past is still in our language and in our everyday words that we use. Let's just talk about names, for instance. Think about names, Roger, Henry, they're just sounds, and there are some people that throw sounds together, and create names, Shaniqua or, Deshawn or something like that, and they're just creating names by throwing words together. But words have always had meaning, and names have always had meaning. For instance, we look at Native Americans who name their kids Running Bear or Little Fox or something like that, and we think, oh, how cute. But that's what our ancestors did. I'll give you an example. Ozzy Osbourne, his name Osbourne, comes from two words which means divine bear, so it'd be like, Native American calling his kid Spirit Bear, so, these names came from somewhere. So I won't get into that, but that's, our ancestors had that. We still have that in our culture. It's just we've completely forgotten about it. It's amazing. There's this ancient shamanic past right under the surface that we don't even pay attention to. So one of the most obvious ones is the days of the week. Think about it. Again, it's just a name. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. Do we even know what those mean? Well, actually, it goes back to our very old shamanic past. And it starts with Monday, Moon Day, the day of the moon. And the moon was besides being the orb in the sky, moon comes from the same word for mind, exact same word. There was a point in time when you could say moon and mind, and it was the same thing. Mind and mind, same word. So the moon represents the mind. It represents the reflection of the meditative mind, the reflection of the soul. What is the soul? Again, we've got Sunday. Sunday is the day of the sun. And the sun was a feminine god. So the moon was male and the sun was female. Interestingly enough, when you really look at ancient Indo-European, they weren't just one sex or the other. The moon had a male and a female aspect of it. But it's interesting that the Germanic tribes and some of the early Indo-Europeans focused on the male aspect of the moon, where the sun was feminine. Now, there are actually two aspects to the sun. There's the internal part of the sun, which is where the word sun comes from. And this word is still used in Buddhism, which came from Hinduism, which of course came from Vedic religion. And the word there is, if I'm pronouncing this right, shunyata, something like that. And it comes from that same word of sun, and it means emptiness. Interestingly enough, at the center of the sun is this nuclear reactor, and there's nuclear implosions going on, that the gravity, the emptiness, the gravity of this intense body, the sun, crushes hydrogen atoms, and it's the crushing of those hydrogen atoms that creates the nuclear explosion within the sun that explodes out. Now that energy bounces around in the sun for a really long time, I don't know how long, and then it finally escapes as what we would call rays of sun. And the rays of the sun would be the male aspect of the sun. The internal part of the sun that creates it is the emptiness. That's the sun, and that's the feminine power. And that's the power that our ancestors worshipped, and they called it Sunna. So this is, again, the same word for emptiness that Buddhists use. You know, they want to get to that state of pure emptiness. And that's the same root word where we get the word sun from. So that's the god of the sun. We worship that on Sunday. And then we have Monday and Tuesday. Tuesday, you know, Tuesday. I mean, what the heck does that mean? How many people who say that word every single day have no idea where that comes from? Well, it comes from the god, the Sky Father, whose name was Tu. And I'm sure you've heard me say it before, but Tu is the same root where we get Jupiter, Dupiter. It's the same root where we get Zeus. Actually, the root Zeus is I think, a vocative for D. So T, D, Tu, Zeus, Zeus. In the Vedic, it was Deus Pater. Same thing. The Sky Father, the Day Father, the Father of the Sky. And this was somebody who lived, an emperor who lived in the North Star, who controlled all of the heavens. And even in the Chinese, the Taoist tradition, which is, you know, I've written about that extensively, but that's a completely different branch of human linguistics. And, you know, they came from Africa even earlier than, you know, Europeans, you know, or the people who became the Europeans came out of Africa. And they worshipped a Sky Father who lived in the North Star, whose name was D, or T. It's the same root. So he's probably the oldest of all of the celestial gods. So that's Tuesday, the god of the Sky Father. And of course, he took a subordinate role to Woden, or Odin, who became the king of the gods. But I think before that, it was Tu. We get to the next day, which is Woden's Day. Woden's Day, Wednesday, the day of Odin, the day of Woden. And so he was the king of the gods, and even though we don't have it in any of the mythology, my belief and the belief of a lot of others is that at some point during the Teutonic history, there became this worship and this focus on shamanic ecstasy and the god of shamanic ecstasy. And actually, when you look at the mythology, Odin is self-created, and I get into that in some other videos, but he's self-created. And it's self-created of consciousness. So it's we're talking about is the self-evolution of consciousness. So Odin is a really great god in a lot of ways. And I haven't talked about it before, but you know, Odin, if there is any god for atheists, it would be Odin. Because Odin is self-created. He's self-evolved. He didn't need to be created by the other gods. He self-evolved. And he then went on to create, according to the myths, human beings, which really means the consciousness of human beings. And he's the one that gave human beings consciousness and awareness and divinity. And what that means is that human beings are self-evolved. Our conscious awareness is self-evolved. So if you want to worship evolution, if you want to be just an atheist and you don't like the idea of some god or some force creating you, you can still have a spiritual path. You can worship Odin. Odin is that. His name means he who is consumed with self-awareness. That's all he is about. And that's why he's so ecstatic and so intense and so powerful. Because just the constant being in the moment, aware of all things, you know, pure, what we would call enlightenment. And it's interesting because the ancient understanding of enlightenment was very dynamic, very expressive, whereas the modern New Age idea of enlightenment is that you have no feelings and nothing bothers you, and you know, that's not the original idea of awareness. Awareness was full of life, full of dynamic expression. Totally different idea. And that's because in modern times, people are afraid of their emotions. We live in a time where we're disconnected from our emotions. We're shamed if we have sadness, if we have anger, if we have whatever it is, whatever our feelings are, if it's not just comfortable and happy all the time, you're too emotional, you're too this, you're too that. And you wonder why we have people running around shooting up, movie theaters and dance houses. Really? I mean, anyway, I could go on and on and on. So this is Woden, a self-awareness. Not only self-awareness, but experience of one's true dynamic self. That's Woden. And then we have Thursday, which is obviously Thor's Day, Thunar's Day. It was originally in Old English Thunar's Day, but Thor's Day, the god of thunder and lightning. Thor is a very strong association with the planet Jupiter. And there's even instances in the myths where it talks about Thor, getting rid of missiles coming to the Earth and all that. And it turns out that Jupiter, the intense gravity of Jupiter, actually pulls meteors, out of the path towards Earth. I mean, if it weren't for Jupiter, we'd be getting constantly bombarded by meteors and other, extraterrestrial missiles. So that's what Thor is. Thor is the protector of mankind, the protector of Midgard, this planet Earth. He protects us physically, he protects us emotionally. He also protects us, like I said, even from meteorites. This is the power of Thor. This is the power of thunder and lightning. We talked about that in the last one, that lightning is about transformation, of life force energy that transforms you and dispels and destroys negativity. So Thor is a god of personal boundaries. If you ever have problems with boundaries with other people, you have codependent issues, Thor is the guy who will give you that. He'll teach you what your boundaries are, and he'll teach you how to be able to interact with other people and still keep your identity. This is why it's so powerful. The electromagnetic force is what prevents things, my finger from going through my other finger, from me going through the floor into the earth. It's just this tiniest of invisible barriers, but it's, I don't know how many thousands of times stronger than the force of gravity. This is why Thor is seen as this giant. He's half giant. He's this giant, incredibly strong being that nobody can defeat, because it's the power of electromagnetism. So all of our ancestors knew that all of these things, on an intuitive level, and that these energies have a conscious awareness. So this is who Thor is. And then we have Friday, which is Frigg's Day. Frigga is the wife of Odin, the goddess of love, the goddess of, she has a strong connection to Freja, who is the goddess of fertility. In fact, some people mix those two goddesses up, but trust me, according to the language, Freja and Frigga, two different deities, but they still both have a very strong connection to the planet Venus and to nurturing and fertility and growth and motherhood and all that. So that's Friday. And that's interesting because Friday is the day that we go out. If there's one day a week that we go out and we look for love, it's Friday, which is Frigg's Day, which I find interesting. And then we have Saturday. Now Saturday means Saturn's Day, and that was taken later in time. It was taken from the Romans, who worshipped Saturn on Saturday. But before it was called Saturday, it was called Washing Day. And I think in some other places, I think in the Scandinavian world, I think it's still called Washing Day. And that's interesting because what do you do when you wash? You're washing your dirty laundry, right? You're cleaning up your karma. You're cleaning up the actions, and karma, that's what karma is. It has to do with work, with arms, getting your hands dirty. And that's what Saturn is. Saturn is the cosmic judge. And Saturn is the planet that, is very, it can be a very difficult planet. I mean, if you've got a really malefic Saturn in your chart, it means that you've got some major karmic issues that you got to deal with in this lifetime. And Saturn's not going to let up, By the way, this is how to get through difficulty. You learn the lesson. So stop fighting it. Whatever the lesson is, stop fighting. If you just knuckle under and learn the lesson, Saturn will relent. That's all he cares about. He just wants you to learn the lesson. But that's why it's called Washing Day. You're washing your dirty laundry. And so it's interesting that, again, there's no coincidence here, when it comes to spirituality. There's always a connection. So we've gone through all the days of the week, and the point of that is that our ancestors worshiped the planets, they worshiped nature. In fact, according to some, the first gods were the planets. And anyway, in terms of that, let's see, how long we've been going a long time. So I'll go a little bit longer. So interesting, when it comes to Teutonic spirituality, we still have that in our, we use the word weird, which I won't take up the time talking, but that is like the core of Teutonic, tribal Germanic spirituality was the power of weird. And we use that word every day. We use the days of the week every day. Christianity could not get rid of these shamanic understandings. So that's enough of me about that chapter. So I strongly recommend getting Celestial Qigong, the most powerful energy work I've ever done. I highly recommend it if you want to make some serious progress in your shamanic work, your rituals, whatever it is that you do. I recommend that you get that. And I also recommend, if you're interested, that you click on the apprenticeship link. Apprenticeship just means that we work on a weekly basis, that I work with you one-on-one, and I teach you whatever you want to learn. But I'm looking for people who want to take all of my knowledge and do something with it. So that's what an apprentice is. We work 1 hour a week by phone, by Skype, or in person, depending on where you live. So that's all for now, until the next chapter in the book, The Thunder Wizard Path.